Come on, man.
Let me give you some trash talk, okay?
Come on, man.
Jesus Christ, I met some dumb bastards in my time, but you outdo them all.
Come on, man.
Oh, short son of a bitch.
Come on, man.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
Come on, man.
You've got to get mad. You've got to get mad. You've got to get mad.
Doctors have been sending me these things. And, this is neither pro nor con vaccine. This is not a judgment statement. But imperfect vaccination can enhance the transmission of highly virulent pathogens.
Right.
So this is a scientific paper from 2015 that shows here's what an important quote: vaccines that keep the host alive but still allow transmission can thus allow virulent strains to circulate in a population. So vaccines that don't kill the virus, vaccines that allow people, like this is one of the things we're finding out about what they're calling breakthrough cases.
Right.
So people who are vaccinated can still get COVID and they can still transmit COVID. This recently happened at the Comedy Store. A vaccinated comedian gave COVID to like 12 different fucking people at the Comedy Store. Some of them vaccinated, some of them not. That situation where the vaccine just kind of protects you from serious damage,
right?
But it protects you from really being like badly hospitalized or death, but doesn't stop you from getting the virus, can possibly lead to more potent viruses. So these people that are saying, oh, it's these unvaccinated people that are responsible for the variants. Well, there's actually scientific papers that point to the very sort of environment that we're creating by having so many people vaccinated with a vaccine that doesn't kill off the virus.
Hi-yow! Info Ninja. Back in the podcast again, baby. It feels good to be deep inside your ears once again. Did you miss me? It's been a full 2 weeks. The interesting thing about this show, I've done other podcasts before, but the really interesting thing about Info Ninja is it's happened twice in the show's history where I've had to go on just a little like mini hiatus. It's been like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I haven't been able to put out a show. Whenever that happens, normally a podcast will lose some listeners during that time. In my podcast in the past, that's been the truth. Not the Info Ninja, baby. I actually gained a few listeners each time, so maybe it'll happen this time. Fingers crossed. And speaking of gaining things, if you want to gain a brand new, shiny, beautiful membership to the dojo, baby, that's our mailing list, just send an email to infoninjapodcast@gmail.com. That easy. And of course, like, subscribe, give a good review, share this. That's the most important thing. There are people that are inside the matrix. These are your CNN watchers, your MSNBC folks. These folks aren't living in normal reality. You have to get the message to them somehow. Chances are you're going to send it to them, they're not even going to listen to it. But if they do, ha 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 ha, we might change a mind. So it's always worth doing it. Just send it repeatedly. You should just send it to all your friends and family. When I put out a new show, give it to your mom, give it to your grandpa, give it to everybody that you love, because if you really care about someone, you want them to have the info, baby. And especially this info, because this is the epic conclusion of our 3-part series, My Body, My Choice. We first started out and we talked about health. How, that's kind of your responsibility. And most of the people in this country, most of the people around the world, they're not really into things that they're responsible for. They like to blame other people and they like to look for other people to do things for them. But that's the thing about fitness. People can't hand you fitness. But that's the awesome thing about fitness too, is that when you achieve it, you can be really proud of it because nobody gave it to you. You earned it, baby. And then we started talking about, missing numbers and vaccines don't make sense. And, all this stuff doesn't seem to really be based in medical science. It seems to be based in political science. Rand Paul just said, I'm not going to get the shot. I'm not going to get the shot because I already had COVID and I have a natural immunity built up right now. And people are lambasting him. But what he's saying makes medical sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you're getting a forced chemical injection, and that's really what it is. If your employer is saying, hey, if you want to keep feeding your family, you might go on a little bit of a hiatus and not have a job, and you might get something better, but guaranteed right now, if you stay with us, you can feed your family and pay rent and keep a house. You just got to get this chemical injection. It's experimental. It's experimental.
Yes, Satan? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You sounded like someone else.
That's crazy, right? That's what's really happening right now. And Rand is kind of saying, hey, resist this. Resist more lockdowns, resist this crap. None of this makes medical sense. He's kind of saying what I want to say in this episode, and that's resist the premise. Question the premise. Go, what are we all accepting as truth? That's the premise. When we start an argument, the premise of the argument can be off. We can have an argument about the sky being blue, grass being green, and the Chupalapa being red. And you say, hold on a second. I don't want to argue over the Chupalapa being red because Chupalapas, I don't even know what the hell that is. Does that even exist? Which, by the way, it may exist, but I just made it up. I think if I get a dog, it's definitely going to be named Chupalapa now. Chupalapa, the Chihuahua. But the premise is what they've gotten us to accept. And Rand Paul recently came out, and here, listen to this.
It's time for us to resist. They can't arrest all of us. They can't keep all of your kids home from school. We don't have to accept the mandates, lockdowns, and harmful policies of the petty tyrants and bureaucrats. We can simply say no, not again. President Biden, we will not accept your agency's mandates or your reported moves towards a lockdown. No one should follow the CDC's anti-science mask mandates. Local bureaucrats and union bosses, we will not allow you to do more harm to our children again this year. Children are not at any more risk from COVID than they are from the seasonal flu. Every adult who works in schools has either had the vaccine or had their chance to get vaccinated. There is no reason for mask mandates, part-time schools, or any lockdown measures. Children are falling behind in school and are being harmed physically and psychologically by the tactics that you have used to keep them from the classroom during the last year. We won't allow it again. Do I sound fed up to you? That's because I am. I'm not a career politician. I practiced medicine for 33 years. I graduated from Duke Medical School. I've worked in emergency rooms. I've studied immunology and virology. And I ultimately chose to become an eye surgeon. I've been telling everyone for a year now that Dr. Fauci and other public health bureaucrats were not following the science, and I've been proven right time and time again.
But my main man, Rand Paul, I was really into his dad, Ron Paul. I thought Ron Paul was the absolute bomb, and he got absolutely screwed. Ron Paul was for the Constitution. This guy had never had a scandal in his life. He was a medical doctor. He really questioned the premise of what we were doing in our banking system as well. He wrote a book called End the Fed. He's talking about the Federal Reserve. And remember, folks, the Federal Reserve, the people that give us our money and decide what our interest rates are on that money. So essentially, they own our government. That's not a branch. The Federal Reserve is like Federal Express. It's a private company. That's for a different episode. But his dad, Ron, was into fighting that. Rand is just kind of following in his dad's footsteps. I'm not the biggest Rand fan sometimes, but I was always a Ron fan. But Rand is probably the best we have right now. So I'm absolutely behind the guy. But he came out and he said, resist. He said, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make the premise they're trying to get us to accept. None of this makes scientific medical sense. It makes political sense for them. The big premise that they're trying to get us to accept, what this show is really, this episode is all about, what we've been building up to over these fantastic 3 episodes. Thanks for following me on the journey, by the way. It's nice to have a friend on the journey. We can both have backpacks. We can carry extra stuff. I keep all the booze in my backpack. You keep all the drugs in yours. That's fine. We don't need water. We don't need food. This is podcast land. This bullshit premise that they're trying to get us all to accept is that things like masks and lockdowns and social dumbass distancing, don't even get me started, and forced chemical injections actually can do something to stop COVID. Guess what, folks? This is the premise that they're trying to get you to accept, is that you can do something about this, and guess what? You can't.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it.
COVID's going to happen. Just like the flu happens every year, COVID's going to happen. How do I think COVID came to be? I think somebody fucked up. That's what I think happened. And I think the United States paid for it via Dr. Fauci, who tried to cover his ass. Now, I don't think they were directly paying for someone to create a terrible virus that would get out. I don't think they ever thought it would get out. I think the gain of function research, that's when they take a virus and they try to make it stronger so that they can be ready for when it, changes or whatever it does. I think that's, got good intention. I think it's a really bad idea in a lot of aspects. Maybe I don't know enough. Maybe it's really important. That's how we get ready to save the world. I don't know. I don't want to rule it out. But what I'm saying is the idea of taking something that isn't good and making it worse just sounds like a bad idea. But I think someone screwed up. It got out. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I don't think it was, released as a weapon. I don't think it was meant to be weaponized, because that's kind of dumb. If you released it as a weapon, unless you were one of those people that just wanted to watch the world burn, it could eventually get to you, because it's going to spread to everybody. It's a pandemic. It goes everywhere. But there's nothing that we can do about it. It's just going to have to run its course. COVID's here. It happened. We can speculate on how, why, what it is, but it's here. It happened. And now we're just going to have to let it run its course. And there's some kind of an argument to say that the vaccinations that we're doing and all the other stuff we're doing that may be slowing things down a little bit, potentially. The data it's crazy these days. You don't know what's real and what's not real. Go to one website, go to a different website. You're going to read different numbers from different sources. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that some of the stuff we're doing is slowing down the inevitable. That's like being chained to the boat as it's going down and holding your breath. You're going to drown. Just take a gulp and be done. That's an interesting story. So I used to work as a dishwasher. I'm flying off on a tangent here, but I used to work as a dishwasher way back in the day. It was like my first real job. And I remember when I did it, I said, you know what? I am going to college. I am not going to do this shit for the rest of my life. But I was working as a dishwasher, and two of the guys that worked there, they were twins, and they kind of bounced around from different, they were cooks, different cooking jobs that are available all around the United States, and kind of went on adventures. They were kind of hippies. But they had worked on a ship that had, would spend months at sea, and it was like a fishing vessel or something, but it was fairly large. It wasn't one of the small deadliest catch type vessels, and they were cooks on it. And they said it was the absolute most terrible job on planet Earth, that it got so boring and so terrible, and that the guys were just drunk assholes that were on the ship, and they hated it. But this is the point of the story, as it lends itself to what I said earlier, is that they were told that if the ship was going down, to just go underwater and just take a deep breath of water into their lungs, and that it would be a very peaceful death and they would drown. So FYI, if you're ever cooking on a sailing vessel in the middle of the ocean and it goes down and you can't do anything, don't hold your breath. That makes it worse. Just breathe in some water, suck it down, and smile, knowing that you no longer have to bear witness to the Biden administration. But it's important to understand that all these things like masks and lockdowns, they might have been, best efforts, but they were really meant to give us the illusion of control. Like we can somehow control God, control Mother Nature. This is not true. We've proven this over and over again. How many dams have burst? How many levees have broken? How many earthquakes have split cities in half? God, nature wins every time. And this is the case with COVID. COVID's going to kill some people. It sucks. And these are people who, if they would get the flu, they would probably die as well. These are people with major comorbidities. I think the percentage was, of the people that die with COVID, there is an average of 2.6 comorbidities. That means they have diabetes and they're obese, or they have cancer and high blood pressure. Comorbidities, people that weren't necessarily, they weren't knocking on death's door, but they weren't in great health. Those are some people that are dying from this. Essentially so far, and I'm hearing different things about the variants, that if you're young and you're in decent shape, that, it isn't really affecting you that much. It's skipping you over, or if you do get it, it's a very mild thing that happens. And they tell you if you get the vaccine that it's going to be a very mild case if you get it. And we know that that's not necessarily true for everyone. We know that if you get the vaccine, you can still get sick. We know that if you get the vaccine, you can still spread COVID. These are not popular talking points for them. There is thought that possibly because of the vaccinations and the stuff that we're doing, that we are essentially, by putting off the inevitable, allowing this thing to kind of mutate. rather than have it reach the herd immunity that it would naturally reach if we wouldn't have done these things. I don't know what's right or wrong. Should we make no effort to try to save ourselves, or should we be strong and let this thing go through? Well, the thing is, the same argument could be made about a really bad flu that we get every year. Do you remember the bird flu and the pig flu or the swine flu? These were things that made their way through that you needed to be worried about. But they were essentially the flu. It was just a really bad case of the flu. And COVID's a little different than that. It's a little more upper respiratory. But essentially, we're dealing with the flu. Why is this being hyped up so much more? Well, COVID spreads a lot easier, is kind of the idea that they're saying, that's the deal. It spreads a lot easier. But it seems like, at least from when I look at data-wise, there's not a huge difference between flu deaths and COVID deaths. There's a difference, but not a huge difference. So the hype behind this is very beneficial to a few folks. It's very beneficial to the media because they got to have a boogeyman. They got to have something to run with. Nobody wants to see the puff piece, right? I want to see the puff piece. I want to hear about the kid that helps the grandma cross the street, but apparently most people don't. They want to see the train wreck, and that's COVID for them. They lost Donald Trump. They got COVID. COVID's good. They don't want to let COVID go. They definitely don't. And any of those folks out there that might be thinking the authoritarian, control freaks are into this, they're 100% right. It's not a conspiracy, okay? These people are very open about always wanting to control us, but essentially they see opportunity. Never forget about the rules for radicals, Saul Alinsky bullshit that happened under Obama. Obama was really big into rules for radicals by Saul Alinsky. It was this book where essentially it said, never let a good crisis go to waste. That means when crisis happens, you can really make change, especially social change. And guess what? It's usually towards communism. It's usually towards authoritarianism. It usually leads to people dying. And there are people taking advantage of COVID in exactly the same way. Just think of what the media is doing, and now take a politician and put him in the place of the media. They're doing the same thing. They're using it to their advantage. But the sad truth is, it doesn't matter how many news articles they write, how many shows they have about how bad it is. It's not going to change the fact that they're never going to let it go, or at least they're going to try to hold on to it for as long as they humanly can and get as much change out of it as possible. Why they have a hold of it, be able to change, culture, the economy, whatever they think is best for us. They're going to do it. Why they have this COVID excuse? It doesn't change the fact that COVID's going to run its course. It has to run its course. That's what's going to happen. I remember when Donald Trump said that, and they ripped him a new one. It's got to run its course. And you know what? Initially, I wasn't too happy about hearing that because I'm thinking, hey, man, let's be positive here. We're going to get through this. But that's kind of what he was saying. Hey, this is going to run its course. It sucks. Let's protect the people that need to be protected. Let's not shut the world down because it's not going to be good. And shutting the economy down didn't do anything good for anybody. 15 days to slow the spread. Remember that? 15 days. It's been like 500 plus days, and there's still portions of this lockdown still in place in places. There's restrictions still in place. I know we're not locked down like we were initially for the first 15 days or month or whatever it was, but 15 days to slow the spread. This gives you a general idea of why people really defend the Second Amendment. They don't want to give an inch on the Second Amendment because they know if you give the government an inch, they're going to take a mile. And the next thing you know, you're going to be able to have a .22 rifle that you have to ask the government to shoot. That's where it ends up, folks. You could still own a gun. It's just got to be a .22, and you got to let us know what day you're shooting it. And we'll let you shoot one bullet. That's why they defend it. And this is a great example because the government got an inch, 15 days, and then they took a mile. And the hype only makes sense for that reason. So they can get more of what they want. They can capitalize on a bad situation. Now let's look back to the real deadly pandemic, the Spanish flu, 1918. Okay, this was a terrible version of the flu that was crazy because normally the flu kills the very young or the very old, and the people in the middle, they get through it. This one kind of really centralized on people between the age of 20 and 40 and knocking them out, and the very young and the very old. I mean, entire towns died. Way different than COVID, okay? And you can make the argument that maybe that's the way it would be today if we didn't have the medical treatment and this and that and the... Okay, I get it. But you know what? I can talk about the Spanish flu of 1918 because of the things I've read. You can talk about it. The CNN can talk about it. But I'd love to hear from somebody that lived through it, like this lady.
My name is Edna Register Boone. I was born in 1907. We moved away from the farm when I was 3 years old and moved into the little town of Madrid. I was 10 years old, and my family was the only family in the little town that did not contact the flu. Therefore, my parents became automatic nurses. They nursed every family in town, and one family in particular was outside of town limits. My father and Uncle Eli, whom we called his manservant, dug a common grave and buried 3 people, mother, father, and a young daughter. The people were buried in the clothes they died in and wrapped in the sheets. It brought families closer together, and it brought our little town closer together, because we all suffered losses. But the shock wave that sets in when something like this happens kind of stuns people, you know. They go beyond thinking correctly.
Sounds a little different than COVID, right? Is it as scary as the Delta variant? And next you'll have the, I don't know, I can't do the Greek letter thing, Beta, Psi, Figma, whatever it is. I was actually in a frat and I cannot remember how to do that shit. But to me, it just kind of feels like this countdown to doom. Eventually, we're going to get to Omega. Just get to Omega already. Stop doing the countdown. Call it Omega. And that's going to be the real bad one. That's going to be the one that you get like all this terrible stuff. Your eyeballs bleed, you know, just like the other. Like, I'm sure like leading up to the Omega, there's going to be some bleeding eyeballs. You know, there's going to definitely be some stuff coming out of all the holes. But when you get to the Omega, that's going to be the one where your dick falls off. Just falls off. I mean, you get all that other shit plus your dick falls off. And if that's the case, I am going to get gender reassignment surgery right now. And I advise you to do the same. If you join the military, now that Biden's back in, I think you get it for free too. So serve your country and save your penis from falling off. Just get it chopped off in advance. Think about it. At least you'll have a, albeit non-functioning, but a possibly semi-attractive mangina to show off rather than just a dick hole. I'm not talking about the hole on the end of a penis. I mean just a hole where the penis used to be. That would be your new dick hole. Like, where's your dick? It's just a hole. Oh yeah, you got Omega COVID. Point is, Spanish flu, very deadly. They were burying bodies in the streets, killing 20 to 40-year-olds. And what did they do to solve it? Yeah, they threw some masks on, okay? They tried to do their best to keep things clean and to give people, you know, water and hydration and medicine when there was a doctor around. And that's another argument. Hey, we got more medicine today. If we didn't, COVID might be like the Spanish flu, but no, it's absolutely different. The Spanish flu was much worse, much more deadly, much scarier. And what did they do? They wrote it out. And again, folks, that's the premise they want to get you to accept, is that we can beat this thing, when in fact, yeah, we can. We just need to pray and ride it out. Be healthy. Go to the gym. Exercise. No, you don't have to go to the gym. Just exercise. Drink good water. Eat lots of really healthy food. Be a healthy person. Turn your life around and ride it out. If you're someone that's going to be susceptible, maybe stay home more often. Maybe wear a mask. Get yourself an N95, but wear a mask. But everyone, we're going to have to ride it out. They wrote out the Spanish flu. We are going to ride out COVID. Unless we keep screwing around and this thing morphs and then we do really get the dick falling off Omega thing. I'm so sorry if that ends up being the future. I don't want to predict the future in that sense. I love being right about things, not dicks falling off. Nah, keep mine right where it is. Keep yours right where it is. If you don't have a penis, maybe you care about somebody that has a penis. You don't want them to get Omega COVID, and neither does the Info Ninja. Just remember, if they really thought masks would work, they would give everybody the N95 mask. Regular masks don't work, folks. You remember when they asked us to wear double masks? It was like, oh, one mask does work and you should wear two, so it works twice as good. Yeah, that doesn't Okay, I'm starting to question if the one mask was actually working. No, it was meant to give you the illusion of this is working and I'm safe, when they knew that there's really nothing we can do. We can try to be as healthy as we can, but we actually just have to ride it out. And I can hear some folks out there going, but masks do work. Masks do work. Well, number one, you need to look up Dr. Fauci's paper. And this would be from the early 2000s that he wrote on masks and talked about how like the N95 is like the only thing that works and everything else is kind of just you're playing around, because if you could smell something through your mask, then viruses, COVID, airborne stuff can get through. Think about this. If you've ever been wearing your mask and you've been attacked by an elevator terrorist, you know, this is somebody that gets on the elevator and shits their pants, and then you get on right after them and the doors close. That's right. Throw your mask on. You won't smell a thing. Yeah, you definitely smell a thing. If you've been crop dusted by a death ass, this is someone that something died inside their ass and it's trying to come out. It's trying to make its way to the afterlife. That's afterlife for asses. Copyright Info Ninja 2021. If you can smell it, COVID can get in. Don't believe any of the bullshit out there. Well, actually, COVID particles are bigger than fart particles. I actually read an article about that. I was like, this is complete bullshit. There was no sources on it or anything. It was just this diatribe about how you should wear your mask. Well, I understand. We want everyone to feel safe. But there's smart people out there that go, you know, this is bullshit. And then they stop believing everything else you tell them, like, hey, take this forced chemical injection. It'll be good for you. They locked us down. Did not work to do anything except destroy the economy. They asked us to social distance 6 feet. This drove me crazy. So I should be 6 feet away from people and then I'm safe. Does that mean if I'm 7 feet away from someone that I am safe plus a foot? Or if I'm 5.5 feet away from someone that I'm 6 inches closer to danger? It doesn't make sense, especially outdoors. I thought sunlight killed this thing. I thought fresh air wouldn't be an issue. Indoors, yeah, maybe you make an argument, you know, we're all inside, we're sharing the same germs. Maybe we need to be further apart. Maybe we all need to have N95 masks. Because remember, if the government really thought masks would work, they would just buy everybody N95 masks. That stimulus money would have went and bought us all masks. It would have been free. Everybody would have got a package in the country and it would have had an N95 mask, like hundreds of N95 masks stuffed into one package. That's if we really cared about this and thought we could stop it. See, the thing is, the N95 mask does work. It will filter things out, but they still know that we got to ride it out. We're going to slow it down, but we got to ride it out. And I know that's hard to hear if someone you know died. It's hard to hear if you have COVID or if you have a comorbidity. Be strong, man. We're all Americans. We're going to get through this, but we got to ride it out. And that makes medical sense. That's scientific, not political. And the longer we put it off, maybe the more vaccines we make, and I don't know if this is factual or not, there's two arguments, is that it may just lead to more variants. It may get us to the omega faster. And us hiding away, maybe we're letting our immune systems take too much of a break. Maybe these masks are stopping a few germs, and maybe all this social distancing and staying home is giving our immune systems these breaks, and we're going to become even more susceptible to common stuff like the regular flu or to the common cold. I think we may see a resurgence in that stuff, and that's been talked about before. A great example of this is when you're a kid, you're digging your hands in the dirt, you know, you're putting stuff in your mouth you shouldn't, but your immune system is developing, and it's making you strong to be an adult. Best said by my main man, George Carlin.
What do you think you have an immune system for? It's for killing germs. But it needs practice. It needs germs to practice on. So listen. If you kill all the germs around you and live a completely sterile life, then when germs do come along, you're not going to be prepared. And never mind ordinary germs, what are you going to do when some super virus comes along that turns your vital organs into liquid shit? I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get sick, you're going to die, and you're going to deserve it because you're fucking weak and you got a fucking weak immune system. Let me tell you a true story about immunization, okay? When I was a little boy in New York City in the 1940s, we swam in the Hudson River, and it was filled with raw sewage, okay? We swam in raw sewage, you know, to cool off. And at that time, the big fear was polio. Thousands of kids died from polio every year. But you know something? In my neighborhood, no one ever got polio. No one, ever. You know why? Because we swam in raw sewage. It strengthened our immune systems. The polio never had a prayer. We were tempered in raw shit.
And it's so true, they swam in sewage. And that's kind of what we need to do. We need to go swim in some sewage, folks. That's gonna fix this. Be strong, have faith, know that we're gonna get through this. If you're someone that needs to protect yourself more, protect yourself, but also try to make changes in your lifestyle and just know that this ain't gonna stop America, baby. What's gonna stop America is these assholes we have in DC. And we're getting a chance to replace a bunch of them coming up here. And we're gonna talk about that. Maybe next episode. I don't know. I've got some great ideas. But I wanna tell you how honored I am that you listen every week. How honored I am that I do get emails from some of you. And I stopped getting dick pics. I shouldn't have said that. I screwed up. When I say that, I get more dick pics. Maybe this Omega COVID isn't a bad thing. Hayow! Info Ninja.
Germs. Where did this sudden fear of germs come from in this country? Have you noticed this? The media constantly running stories about all the latest infections, salmonella, E. coli, hantavirus, bird flu, and Americans they panic easily, so now everybody's running around scrubbing this and spraying that and overcooking their food and repeatedly washing their hands, trying to avoid all contact with germs. It's ridiculous, and it goes to ridiculous lengths. In prisons, before they give you a lethal injection, they swab your arm with alcohol. It's true. It's true. It's true. Well, they don't want you to get an infection. And you can see their point. Wouldn't want some guy to go to hell and be sick. It would take a lot of the sportsmanship out of the whole execution. Fear of germs. Why, these fucking pussies. You can't even get a decent hamburger anymore. They cook the shit out of everything now because everybody's afraid of food poisoning. Hey, where's your sense of adventure? Take a fucking chance, will you? You know how many people die in this country from food poisoning every year? 9,000. That's all. It's a minor risk. Take a fucking chance, bunch of goddamn pussies.